back to Rome's Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Rome's, and I have an interesting last episode for you today. In this third podcast episode, I will be discussing a slightly more political topic, which is diversity and inclusivity in the future of marketing. This episode, I have again decided to use the tools available with artificial intelligence and command prompts to design parts of my podcast. We may also get an appearance from my previous co-host. Before we begin, I want you to consider where you may actually use AI in your daily life or working environment. How important is it for you? This could be from making a cup of coffee to analytical tracking. As a tool, it is certainly useful. My highlight is that it should be used as a tool, not a replacement. If you think AI is actually better than HI, which is human intelligence, let me know in the comment section. Maybe you will be surprised by how much of an influence AI actually has in your life. Anyway, let's get back to today's podcast episode topic, diversity and inclusivity. We will evaluate a leading D&I trend-setting brand, discuss some surprising findings in the luxury fashion industry, and take a look at the theoretical marketing concept's importance in diversity and inclusivity. Again, this is your favorite marketing podcast host, Rome's. Grab a drink, a snack, or enjoy listening to this podcast during your walk, run, or drive. Remember to stay safe and alert if you are driving. And as usual, this episode is going to be exciting. Let's jump right in. Diversity and inclusivity. What is diversity and inclusivity? It is visible almost everywhere we go, online or offline. Ultimately, in marketing, the more involved people are, the more they feel involved, the more they will buy the product or service of that brand. By definition, diversity is to have variety, the state or quality of being different or varied, a point of difference. Most importantly, for today's context, the inclusion of people of different races, genders, religions in a group. This is something we will discuss later in the podcast. Additional definitions include logically the relation that holds between the two entities when and only when they are not identical. The property of being numerically distinct. That's according to a Collins dictionary anyway. Inclusion, by definition, is the act of including or the state of being included. Also, in geology, not related to today's podcast, a solid fragment, liquid, globule, or pocket of gas enclosed in a mineral or rock. You learn something new every day, eh? And lastly, inclusion, as for purpose of this podcast, something or someone included. In marketing, these two factors play a major role in building brand reputation, and will continue to do so in the future of marketing as brands look to build market share and strengthen brand associations with different core values. Now we have a collective understanding of both diversity and inclusivity, or inclusion, in the future of marketing. Let's swiftly move on to our first segment today, embracing diversity and inclusivity. Looking ahead, the future of marketing will see an even stronger emphasis on diversity and inclusion. Brands that proactively incorporate D&I into their strategies will be better positioned to navigate the evolving landscape. Here are some key areas where D&I will play a pivotal role. 1. Representation in advertising. 2. Inclusive product development. And 3. Diverse marketing teams. If we consider our first pivotal role, number 1, representation in advertising, advertisements will increasingly feature diverse casts, showcasing a broad spectrum of ethnicities, genders, ages, and abilities. This not only reflects the real world, but also helps consumers feel seen and valued. Secondly, inclusive product development. Companies will design products that cater to diverse needs. This includes considering different body types, skin tones, cultural preferences, and accessibility requirements. By doing so, brands can tap into underserved markets and create products that truly resonate. And lastly, our third pivotal role, diverse marketing teams. Having diverse teams is essential for creating inclusive campaigns. Teams that bring varied perspectives are more likely to identify and address biases, resulting in more authentic and effective marketing efforts. If you do begin to search your favorite brands' policies in relation to D&I, you will begin to see alignment of these pivotal roles. When I say D&I, it's simply diversity and inclusivity. With visible representations within existing and upcoming marketing campaigns, there are no restrictions or limitations on types of gender, race, age, or sexuality of people associated with advertisement of the brands. Although brands and advertising agencies must, of course, still show respect to the industry they are advertising in. What does this mean? It means a sport or activity that is considered to be more targeted to a specific demographic, simply because these are the people who play the sport or take part in the activity. Shouldn't compromise in terms of their own values towards sport, but they should incorporate and create opportunities still in terms of both diversity and inclusivity. There is nothing disrespectful or offensive about a brand promoting a product to their intended target demographic. If that target demographic changes, then their promotion will of course change. Canny Creative have actually listed 13 successful brands in their most successful rebrands with key takeaways. Article which only goes to show that representation and consumer voice is valued. A consumer speaks with their wallet, and in modern times their e-wallet or e-purse to be inclusive. This is no new concept. First on Canny's list, brand formerly known as Dunkin' Donuts now dropped the donut. Literally dropped the donut from their brand name and logo, in which they now promote other products for sale, such as coffee, hash browns, bagels, sandwiches, cold brews, croissants. Fortunately, they still sell donuts, which is good, but now they sell more items, which is better. This should result in more revenue and more happy customers. More customers will feel involved, more opportunity to say, oh, have you been to Dunkin'? Which now no longer means donuts. It simply means, have you been to Dunkin', who sell multiple products? This approach to diversity targets a wider audience and consumers feel included with what before was only associated with an emotional connection and touch point that targeted our sweet taste buds. I would have liked to have gone through some more of these successful brands, but what I noticed is that was one of the best ones from the 13 successful rebrands by Canny Creative. But quickly returning to the 3 pivotal roles of D&I, my question to you, or food for thought, is give me an example where a brand has made you feel included simply by their marketing strategy alone. This could be a clothing brand or accessory, a car or electric vehicle, cosmetic product, or even a food manufacturer like our Dunkin' example. Personally, I would say many technology development companies clearly adopted and are adopting new marketing methods of products in new environments. I noticed this with many technologies such as audio headphones available in locations they otherwise were not. The Swatch Group rebranding wax straps in early January. L'Oreal introducing a new product. I wouldn't say it necessarily made me feel included, but it did give me insight into brands' approach to wanting others to feel included. This actually gives credit to packaging manufacturers of a product with carefully planned wording and consideration for increase in market share. When we consider how diversity and inclusion can progress in the future, especially in a marketing environment, education plays a significant importance. I'm sure you will enjoy my 2 creative scenarios coming up. Both Smith and Schoenfeld suggest higher education has an important role to play in the development of diversity and inclusion in wider society. Why is this? And what can education truly achieve in diversity and inclusion in the future of marketing? Let's take any marketing student studying at university and create 2 scenarios. Scenario 1. The marketing student has achieved a 2-1 or first class honours equivalent final grade and has been accepted to work in a leading marketing firm. They have received no teaching towards diversity and inclusion factors in any module during their 3 academic years at university. Once they arrive, they have a boss who is disabled, 2 direct working colleagues who are of different cultural ethnicity, and their first project is an advertisement campaign for fitness to achieve a market penetration objective in a new environment. They immediately ask to be moved to a new department. They cannot work with their colleagues and simply do not respect their boss, which he finds extremely offensive. And the students' campaign comes out as a shambles. They have no idea how to fairly incorporate diversity or inclusion into working life, and their advertisement seems to bias extremely unfairly towards a particular ethnicity and doesn't incorporate somebody who isn't deemed a fitness expert. This causes the agency to pull out of the project and miss out on a huge marketing opportunity. They then have to invest in the new employee in a D&I training course. Scenario 2. The marketing student has achieved a 2-1 or first class honours equivalent final grade and has been accepted to work in the same leading marketing firm. This same student has completed 2 full assignments which are heavily influenced by diversity and inclusivity and understands well the factors involved and considerations that must be given not only within their own working environment but each and every piece of work they do. They meet their boss, who is disabled, and find it inspirational he is in the position he is in. They meet their colleagues and are excited to learn about different cultural norms. When their first marketing project comes to an end, the marketing agency boss sends a letter to the university explaining the quality of exactly what they were looking for from a graduate, and clearly they have gone above and beyond to educate their students in relation to diversity and inclusion. The campaign ends a success and the student has now clearly exercised a skill set developed from higher education. This integration of diversity and inclusion into higher education has been what Tienda suggests as a first step to broader social inclusion. The teaching staff in scenario 2 have shown attention to mandatory working requirements in curriculum design, and this has clearly prepared their student to be a professional, not only with their colleagues, but the marketing work they produce. Responsibility doesn't lie only with the teaching staff. Students must research on ethical issues and trends to accurately strategize for the future of marketing concepts. Ultimately, they are our future marketers, and if educated to understand the types of elements involved in diversity and inclusion, our future brands will fare better in terms of overall successes. You need to appreciate here, both of these 2 scenarios, which I have made up for my podcast today, have students who have both achieved a 2-1 or first class honours in a business or marketing related degree. Yet one has received focused attention to D&I, the other has not. It is certainly interesting to consider the contrast and potential response from an employer who, of course, wants their own business to succeed. Moving on and away from these 2 scenarios, an educational aspect of diversity and inclusion, brands who visually show their customers they are both diverse in their product design or as a service provider are the brands that are setting future trends, which means they determine the direction of the future of marketing. Their brand positioning is better. This means the first thought in mind of customer is often associated with something positive, and the customer and even government have a positive bias towards the brand who engages in active participation of the 9 protected characteristics. For point of my podcast today, diversity and inclusion characteristics. Now I mentioned the 9 protected characteristics. They all cross over into diversity and inclusion one way or the other. UK government in particular has made it very clear that these must be considered in all aspects of daily or working life. As stated on the Gov UK website, it is against the law to discriminate against anyone because of age, gender, reassignment, being married or in a civil partnership, being pregnant or on maternity leave, disabled or disability, race including colour, nationality, ethnic or national origin, religion or belief, sex or sexual orientation. Referring back to brand positioning and first thought in mind, brands who regularly exercise diversity and inclusion with use of a singular or multiple protected characteristics are actually, firstly, sending a reinforcing positive message. Secondly, they are strategically activating key nodes in their audiences to create positive brand associations. This is where the feeling of confidence or excitement comes from a customer purchasing a specific brand or using a specific service. The brand has created their reputation to be respected, which means more customers want to buy their products or use their services. If the brand is respected and stands with this type of message, so will I, is a reasonable consideration and approach by customers. In fact, a customer will spend more money seeing their spending more as an investment than simply just spending out of spontaneity. When I say investment, I don't mean they are investing in stocks of the brand. What they are doing is investing in a brand that will continue to promote a positive message they agree with, and from that they believe will contribute to a better social environment for themselves, friends, family, colleagues, and the general population. And of course, the fact they like the product or service. This reiterates the importance diversity and inclusion is for the future of marketing and brands continuing to adopt promotional messages to grow their audience. If we incorporate Maslow's hierarchy of needs for brands, Wait, Maslow's hierarchy of needs? What does that have to do with diversity and inclusion in the future of marketing? Brands that are actively considering these aspects are clearly showing a much deeper understanding of their consumer. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as a quick reminder, is the pyramid diagram. It has 5 levels to it, starting from the bottom with physiological, with basic needs such as breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, and excretion. Next level up, safety, security of body, of employment, of resources, of morality, of the family, of health, of property. Moving slightly away from basic needs, but still within basic needs, is love, belongingness, friendship, family, sexual intimacy. And from love and belongingness, we begin to move out of the basic needs and necessities more into wants and desires of humans, where we move on to the level of esteem. As I mentioned, the phrase, if the brand is respected and stands with the message, so will I. Esteem highlighting self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, and respect by others. Lastly, the highest level and capstone of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which includes self-actualization, delving into morality, creativity. Again, quite important in marketing, as creative brands can inspire creative people with their approach to marketing campaign strategy. Spontaneity, with marketing approaches of brand positioning and customer buying habits and behaviors. Problem solving, with different types of issues such as diversity and inclusivity. Lack of prejudice, and lastly, acceptance of facts. The Swatch Group rebranding wax straps in early January. L'Oreal introducing a new product. As we reach the top 2 levels of the pyramid, I personally would suggest diversity and inclusion will play a more important role. An actual consideration of purchase will be considered by a consumer. Why? Because somebody who is in a basic need is less likely to be thinking of an advertisement with a nice message promoting LGBTQT or equality for women in sport, or making sure a chocolate bar is fair trade that they needed to eat at the time because their sugar levels were low. But as we advance in Maslow's hierarchy of needs and reach the esteem level, brands can actively target people's want to show respect for others, for example, or in reverse, be respected by others, especially clothing brands. I'm sure you've seen them, large digital billboards on your way to a major city or sponsored advertisements on social media platforms where they make the message extremely clear. This is why I would personally put esteem as maybe the sweet spot level for a successful marketing strategy with diversity and inclusion. Achievement, also an element in esteem, also playing a major role with inclusive communities and collective goals. If I was to play devil's advocate here, I'd ask the question, at what point is LGBTQT really achieved? Or anti-discrimination against race achieved? Even if they are achieved, the message must still be promoted. People take it seriously and audiences are often not small in number. A negative event can quickly lead to promotional efforts and positive messages spreading like wildfire. And all of a sudden we have major personalities, brands and other influencers getting involved due to personal beliefs and their own personal reputation gain. And brands of course benefit tremendous amounts from this. This suggests to me that strategically considering marketing in the future to target esteemed characteristics from Maslow's hierarchy of needs could be the most successful long-term marketing approach. That said, as we revisit the highest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, creativity from brands who are able to execute massively engaging promotional campaigns may fare better at triggering spontaneity purchase habits from consumers. This means that consumers simply make a purchase on the fly based on seeing an advertisement campaign that promotes inclusion and diversity in some way. This combined with temptation of a, let's say, 25% discount, and you have a marketing miracle that should, again, if executed well, still trigger the emotional responses to make consumers want to spend. It actually may not even need to be executed well, but the value from the message, the driving force behind the purchases. This is, of course, no new concept trying to get consumers on board with your brand in marketing. Again, the future marketing still wants to target consumers' emotions and touch points and to consider an answer to my question. LGBTQT, racial or gender inclusivity never ends, as people should never feel excluded based on these characteristics. It continues as a base and fundamental issue to be addressed even when the storm is calm, so to speak. We will, however, see trends based on events that come and go now and in the future, with brands playing their important role in society. Keller and Swaminathan describe this excellently, where the considerations into selection of the right agency model which means active integration, as I described earlier, by coordinating all activities and communications of campaign objectives strategically and in a tactile way. Keller and Somanathan also make comparison of marketing to that of an orchestra, where no matter how good each individual musician is in any given orchestra, if their instruments are not working together in a harmonious way, you inevitably end up with a cacophony of noise. This perhaps Nike's, leading sports clothing brand's forte in marketing, their ability to run multiple promotional campaigns, multiple positive messages while continuing to release new products, new services, and maintaining customer interest and engagement, making their customers, most importantly, as our topic for today's podcast, feel included in any type of sport they play, watch, or want to play, no matter who they are. Last discussion before we move into some actual advertisements from a top diversity and inclusion brand. I'm sure you can guess who it is. The advertisements we make and see now and in the future of marketing, from our promotional campaigns on social media, landing pages, our words and audio used for video media or podcast promotions, are all under subject to heavy scrutiny. And easily, the comment and share button are extremely nearby to the play button. However, both the diversity and inclusion as elements will not have that huge of an impact on a brand or make that brand suffer if their product is of high enough quality and value that customers are willing to pay for the product or service anyway. Many brands, such as high-end fashion brands, are sometimes ridiculed because their models are too thin or their model's jawline has been chiseled a little too perfectly. Adobe Photoshopping experts may be able to take responsibility for that one. That said, as I continued to conduct secondary research of my own, the trend for the most part seemed to be in the direction of having a visible diversity and inclusion objective and statement as a minimum on luxury fashion brands' websites. Take these luxury fashion brands for example. Louis Vuitton, training 100% of employees in prevention of unconscious bias and stereotypes. Gucci with Gucci Equilibrium. Absolutely ridiculous. Gucci Equilibrium. A 10-year plan to connect people, planet, and purpose. Prada, with substantial investment in talent and education advancement programs. Chanel have allocated $1 million supporting women and girls of color. Armani, since 2020, the Armani Group ranked in the top 10 best in Europe for diversity. This only confirms the importance in the upcoming years of marketing strategy to incorporate the various protected characteristics. Actually, quite an inspirational and bold statement from luxury fashion brands. The industry currently valued at $119.28 billion with projected value of $173.05 billion by 2031. That is a compound annual growth rate of 5.5% from 2024 to 2031. These statistics were taken from a 202-page paper titled Global High-End Fashion Market Size by Product, by application, by distribution channel, by geographic scope and forecast, published in 2024 on Verified Market Research website. Now, let's take a look at a leading diversity and inclusion brand and try to work out exactly what they are doing to tick the diversity and inclusion boxes. If you haven't guessed by now, the brand we will be putting under the analytical marketing examination scope in this following section is Nike. All you need to do is pay their diversity, equity and inclusion page or diversity and inclusion page. Yes, they have two of these pages on their website. A quick visit and you can see exactly why they are at the forefront of positive brands supporting these elements. Immediately, we see communities and groups of people at events, some of which are employee-led communities, which only goes to show the types of people they are recruiting within their organization and the direction in terms of staff training and extracurricular activities they are offering. They even have communities called Ascend Network and Friends, Black Employee Network and Friends, Disability Network, Latino and Friends Network, Native American Network and Friends, Nike Military Veterans and Friends, Pride Network, Women of Nike and Friends communities. I was a little disappointed though that their marketing team hasn't taken advantage or has access links to when and where these events take place. Moving on, when you continue to browse on the diversity, equity and inclusion section of their website under focus areas, they have in huge bold numbers what their ambitions are. The Swatch Group rebranding watch straps in early January. L'Oreal introducing a new product. Again, a focus on employees with 84% top quartile for inclusion and engagement relative to peers as rated by our 80,000 employees. This is a major connection with what I mentioned early on in today's podcast, with both Smith and Snowfeld suggesting higher education and the important role it plays in development of diversity and inclusion in wider society. Why? Because the Nike staff are being trained and educated to develop their skill sets that allow them to measure and rate inclusion and engagement. This training is absolutely critical for Nike. This ambition is reinforced with their next ambition objective of 100% of vice presidents credentialed in inclusion leadership education. These are the types of senior position staff who are approving marketing campaign objectives and constantly pushing for diversity and inclusion associations with their brand. Lastly, their final ambition, a figure-based ambition, which only reaffirms and reassures me reading through this list of their continued commitment to diversity and inclusion. This is $10 million invested into historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, and Hispanic serving institutions, HSIs, to continue creating pathways for more diverse talent. Not only do they express their ambitions as a leading sports brand, which is a major trend set influencing message to send out, they also detail where they were as of the 2023 financial year. These statistics may or may not have changed much in this last year, and we will have to wait and see if they have been able to maintain the same level of balance achieved in 2024. These percentages relate to 51% of Nike's global corporate workforce are women, 44% vice presidents and senior leadership team members are women. Let me stop here at the stated Nike internal organizational statistics to mention both Smith and Nkomo. Smith and Nkomo highlight in their journal article paper titled Accelerating the Path to Corporate Leadership for All Women that the barriers we identified more than 2 decades ago persists, and it is likely this statement and highlighted barriers that predominantly women of ethnicity face in leadership are barriers that Nike are clearly targeting within their own organization, with directly and successfully targeting with their approach to diversity and inclusion, in particular their focus towards women within their own workforce environment. This nicely leads us on to their final "Where are we now?" or as of 2023 statistic, which states 41% of our US corporate workforce are US racial and ethnic minorities. In this instance, not only women, as suggested by Smith & Nkomo or focused by Smith & Nkomo, but simply racial and ethnic minorities, male or female. Which means, as with their other two statistics of 51% global corporate workforce being women, 44% of VPs and senior leadership team members also being women, their approach to market themselves in this way in relation to HR and recruitment now and in the future as a leading sports brand and organization will continue to remain at the forefront, with strategies and tactics to find the right balance and sustainable balance in diversity and inclusion, our main areas of concern in this podcast episode. Smith and Nkomo go on to highlight that sustainable changes to get more race and gender diversity into senior leadership positions requires true commitment and action. They refer to a male CEO from Calver and Research Management, a $22 billion investment management company, who wrote, "Ending racism in America is the responsibility of corporations, and corporations must recognize that their efforts to promote their core values and diversity and inclusion programs fall short of what is needed today." Although CEO Mr. John Schroer is talking about specifically America, an organization with the United States, it is not too far a stretch of the imagination that many other organizations, be it leading organizations, SMEs, or newly established organizations, must incorporate clearly and transparently as basic company policy. To incorporate these elements clearly and transparently, of course, for marketing and campaigns means finding a way to promote and advertise their approach to diversity and inclusion. My immediate question is, should a financial organization, retail outlet, distribution company, food service provider, media production company feel obliged to involve more of a certain type of gender or race of people because of diversity and inclusion? To give a quick answer to this question, I would say yes, they should. In 2023, a survey carried out in the United Kingdom-based organisation CIPD, the Chartered Institute for Personnel Development, discovered that under half, 48% to be precise, of employees have a diversity and inclusion strategy or action plan in place, either standalone or as part of their wider people strategy. This suggests we are approaching or currently in a scenario where the majority of organizations have followed the guidance provided and heard the call from government and communities who want more diversity and inclusion in their brands they purchase their products and services from. Going back to my proposed question, should financial organizations, retail outlets, distribution companies, food service providers, media production companies feel obliged to involve more of a certain type of gender or race? It's evident many brands do this anyway, which I think moves away from feeling obliged. By do this, I mean they include our protected characteristics and more into a desire to be involved in a progressive, diverse and inclusive environment. Not only from a political element perspective, but several or all of the elements which in marketing we refer to as pastel analysis. This analysis tool created nearly 80 years ago now by Mr. Francis Aguilera, with each element in this example considered in relation to diversity and inclusivity impacted areas going forward in the future of marketing. Quickly running through these pastel factors include political and general political issues or political trends such as diversity of race or gender and inclusion of race or gender or disability. Economic, with particular attention of unemployment levels of different people who may fall into this category of unemployment. Social, with a focus on cultural trends and patterns in society, much of which we see in advertisements and accessible on organizational websites. Quickly running through these pastel factors include political and general political issues or political trends such as diversity of race or gender and inclusion of race or gender or disability. Economic, with particular attention on unemployment levels of different people who may fall into this category of unemployment. Social, with a focus on cultural trends and patterns in society, much of which we see in advertisements and accessible on organizations' websites. Technological, which requires approach and application of advanced technological type marketing communication tools to access people who are seeing diversity and inclusion advertisements. Environmental, slightly less important in this discussion, but still with consumer environmental awareness and employees who have strong personal beliefs in waste disposal laws, environmental protection laws, energy consumption regulation, and general popular attitude towards the environment. Legal, which is extremely important with organizational requirement to not exclude or avoid a person based on one of the 9 UK government provided protected characteristics. Much of what I have just gone through is actually quite reasonable. The Swatch Group rebranding wax straps in early January. L'Oreal introducing a new product. Organizations are not being expected to create full-on marketing activist anarchy to employ a minority group or to employ or promote a woman within their organization. They are simply saying everybody deserves a fair chance, which is true. Everybody, regardless of characteristic, does deserve a fair chance. They should feel involved and included in making purchase of a product or services and using or receiving their product or service, which is true. Everybody, regardless of characteristics, does deserve a fair chance. They should feel involved and included in making a purchase. They are simply saying everybody deserves a fair chance, which is true. Everybody, regardless of characteristics, does deserve a fair chance. They should feel involved and included in making purchase of a product or service and using or receiving their product or service. Similar to the general rule in sales where the customer is always right, I do get a slight feeling that anybody within the protected characteristics can never be in the wrong, which is of course not true. If somebody is simply not good enough at a sport, why should they feature at the forefront of, let's say, a sports advertisement or promotional campaign because of a protected characteristic? That said, if it does present opportunity of a marketing campaign that can boost visibility or improve customer engagement, then a brand should certainly take advantage of this. They are only trying to improve their brand and they are contributing to diversity and inclusion in the process. Let's move on to our last part of this slightly lengthy segment and return to Nike in what they have actually done to actively promote diversity and inclusion with some fairly recent advertisements. I must say, I do enjoy a promotional campaign by Nike. Maybe this is because I like sports myself, and their football advertisements have always created a buzz that is entertaining and makes you actually feel like you want to participate or get involved. I'm referring to the classic Joga Bonita advertisements, which they released nearly 2 decades ago. Fast forward into some recent advertisements, Nike's approach to trend setting is certainly leading the way. Maybe it is simply the influential power of the brand, and if Nike likes something or wants to promote a message, you are likely to hear about it. First, let's go over a review of a Nike advertisement released in 2020 titled "You Can't Stop Us." Next, if you did wonder, we are actually moving on to a Nike advertisement released in 2024 titled "What If You Can." Before we go into these advertisements, do you notice how bold and invested they sound? Do you think it is the words that carry the power, or as I mentioned, the brand that carries the power? So by bold and invested, I mean the titles of the Nike advertisement. If a lesser known brand made an advertisement titled "You Can't Stop Us" or "What If You Can," would it really carry the same dramatic effect on you hearing the title? For me, I don't think it would. If the message and advertisement was well created, I would still be impressed. But I don't know if it would persuade me to purchase their product. Whereas with Nike, I think because many of us, one way or the other, are existing Nike consumers, we already have an attachment to the brand, which suggests we are more open to receive the message they are sending. This is massively important with the future of marketing, again referring to the importance of trend-setting brands. It's not uncommon for governments to silent partner or support these positive messages due to shared beliefs and ease of promoting a message to a wider audience by doing so. Back to the first of our advertisements by Nike, "You Can't Stop Us." This features close to 30 different sports, countless professional sportsmen and women and athletes, all social influencers. LeBron James and Cristiano Ronaldo, two leading sports influencers of highly contested sports, basketball and football. A motivational and extremely innovative advertisement with a unique style of transitioning scenes from two contrasting sports. A woman in a wheelchair in one side of the screen transitioning into another woman playing a different sport, also in a wheelchair. A cricketer split screen into footballers celebrating together. A long jumper with a linking effect to LeBron James slam dunking a basketball in a game. A Chinese track and field athlete appearing to be running with a rugby ball, which is a commonly associated male-dominated sport. A lady with a full headdress on skateboard into another person on a skateboard riding across the screen, holding a flared-type LGBTQT flag. An ice figure rink skater completing a jumping spin into Ronaldo's infamous Su celebration. Mbappe, another major football sporting influencer, running side by side with a wicketkeeper celebrating. This is actually quite an entertaining scene. And even world's most decorated and successful golfer of all time, Tiger Woods, celebrating maybe a hole-in-one or winning a PGA Golf Championship victory with what appears like a tennis player or cricket umpire making a decision. Throughout the advertisement, the narrator, a female voice, is encouraging and motivating the audience to not give up playing sports. Big, bold writing at the end of the advertisement which says, "You can't stop sports," then sport crossed out to say us. It's again highlighting their commitment to promote diversity and inclusivity in modern sport. Their use of language with the words they choose. Of course, the fact they manufacture and supply almost every type of sporting good you can imagine only gives credit to the Nike marketing team, as there is no mention whatsoever of buying their product. Their strategic approach is to create a promotion that drives attention to the brand from the audience, which immediately associate them with a positive message, a community building message, and an extremely intelligent approach to marketing communications with their audience. They incorporate major sporting and social influences throughout the advertisement, as they do any advertisement. And if you play or enjoy watching a sport, at the time you were not able to, as the country was in lockdown. Live sporting leagues were all on standby, and it could in honesty even be seen as something like a movie trailer or teaser. Audiences eagerly anticipating for sports to return to normal. All the diverse range of sports included. Types of people and personalities included in the advertisement, creating what is overall an inspiring, thought-provoking and sensitive advertisement. It does make you wonder how they may approach something similar in the future. Would they introduce more online or in-app style gamification processes, which they may not quite have had the time to develop the software due to such a surprise from the pandemic events? That said, their involvement does seem to have been enough. But again, something to consider as a Nike fan. customer, or even non-customer if you yourself would be interested in. We have to remember that Nike, a sports clothing brand, is impacted by sports not being played. They have so many different sponsorships, which means any impact on sport will affect them. This means they have to prepare and create new proactive approaches to marketing their brand to effectively manage and control crisis management. This could be with similar style advertisements. This could be through introduction of gamification. This could be with introduction of new and innovative marketing strategies and tactics that have not yet been discovered or released. Sports ultimately must remain diverse and inclusive, and Nike take the full responsibility to ensure their own employees, customers or potential customers are aware of their stance on such matters. Rowan's podcast will return right after these short upcoming assignment messages. The Swatch Group rebranding white straps in early January. L'Oreal introducing a new product. Welcome back to Rowan's podcast. I'm your host, Rowan's. We have already delved into diversity and inclusion from a definition standpoint, from several different marketing conceptual perspectives. We are considered luxury fashion brands with diversity and inclusivity policies. Before our break, we were discussing Nike's You Can't Stop Us marketing campaign ad. Now, we move on to a more recent campaign advertisement. This advertisement designed by Nike is interesting. Its title is actually a rhetorical question, or at least what seems to be a rhetorical question. What if you can? This advertisement again personifies Nike's focus on diversity. It has a young female featured throughout the entire advertisement. It really begins when she steps onto a platform and begins to fantasize about different sports she could be playing, starting with gymnastics, moving into ballet, then swimming, scoring a goal in football in acrobatic style, dancing, skydiving, horse riding, playing basketball. And finally, Nike takes us as an audience back to the opening scene on another day or the same day of her back in the playground being asked to play football by one of her peers. The final message very much saying to young females that you can play any sport you want and should not feel left out. It also intelligently considers the viewpoint of parents who may be concerned about their child and inspire them to actively want to get their child involved in sports. On a side note, hedonic consumption, which Shrilovitz and Myers describe as biobehavior that relates to multisensory fancy and emotions of one's experience with products. This includes interactions that some people may not even realize Nike have any involvement in, with their massively influential involvement in sport. Returning to emotions in the advertisement of the young female. What if you can play the sport you enjoy? What if you are actually good at a sport you enjoy and can train to become even better? Feeling nervous to participate for any person, male, female, young or old, is a normal thing. Even the most successful and elite sportsmen face nerves, both before and during playing sport. It is a normal and human response. Of course, the more sports you play, the more you train yourself to manage these nerves. But they exist, and nervousness is not always a bad thing. It can often simply be eagerness to take part in something you enjoy. Some examples include making a save with a player running at you, scoring a 1-versus goal as a goalkeeper, or like the Nike advertisement, scoring an acrobatic style goal, landing the next acrobatic flip in a gymnastics routine, shooting a basketball from outside the 3-point line with the ball almost seamlessly floating in the air, being excited and nervous that it might go in, that it might not go in, hearing the buzzer sound, seeing your teammate win from the sidelines, wondering if you're going to be put onto the pitch to play. All these sporting scenarios create different types of nerves, and perhaps in the future of marketing, we are only going to see new, innovative and creative methods of targeting consumers holistically to achieve fulfillment of emotional and sensory touchpoints. I've reiterated nerves because this is a core feeling that diversity and inclusion actively targets. In Nike's advertisement example, it is about diversity of sports. It is about feeling included, getting involved on the playground, making friends, creating fun experiences and enjoying playing sports. Whether that is in the young female's experience, remembering sports she had or has played or may want to play in the future. Now, these advertisement examples take into consideration exactly how leading sports brand Nike are continuing to maintain their reputation as a brand for everyone and every sport. They are extremely clear on their message, and Just Do It slogan continues to ring true. This means continued marketing approach to not necessarily directly sell products, but inspire you to want to try new things, make friends, or even return to sports that you have previously loved and enjoyed. In particular, with our last advertisement example, Nike's focused attention to send an encouraging message towards women in sport. I'm sure you know me, you've got to know me a little better now, and you know I like figures and statistics, and after some strategic secondary research, I found that close to $9 billion revenue is generated in the women's market alone. Nike president and CEO Mr. Donahoe disclosed this in an interview with television broadcaster PYMNTS TV, that approximately 40% of Nike's members are women consumers, and business with women has grown high single digits on average over the past 3 years. These consumer statistics are not likely to slow, and advertisements which are focused solely on women's inclusivity, as well as ambitions and objectives of Nike, also relate to women's involvement with the brand as consumer or as employee. In particular, senior executive female employees' involvement with the brand will likely again, or more than likely only improve these revenue sales figures for Nike. Certainly, consumers who are conscious about their brand, checking their favorite brand social media pages and engaging with the content, putting forward their own suggestions, liking and commenting on what they want to see from the brand, want to buy from the brand, expect from the brand, brings forth a future of marketing that is much easier for brands to create and be accepted within a diversity and inclusion environment. Let's discuss how minorities feel about marketing towards them. In a fast-paced and technological environment, things are so much easier for somebody who has no knowledge of the English language, for example. Social media pages and advertisements have translators, which means making new friends or understanding what a product or service is easier. There are even technological mobile connector translator accessories or built-in mobile app translators. I'm almost certain that they work whilst watching television and seeing advertisements or watching advertisements on YouTube. What does this mean for inclusivity? It removes many of the difficulties and challenges brands face when trying to incorporate diversity and inclusivity. Again, if we take a think back to the What If You Can advertisement, with the young female using her imagination of playing a diverse range of sports, then being asked to play with peers by presenting different perspectives, and breaks down our suggested barriers that Smith and Nkomo highlighted earlier, be it activity based with physical participation in sports or psychological aspects with consideration into communication barriers. These small features that we do not often pay attention to are sometimes major features to somebody else. If brands notice either diversity or inclusivity elements or features that they can incorporate into their products or services, then it should, like Nike, most certainly take full advantage of them. Tracking the successes of this in KPIs or key performance indicators could actually become quite interesting in the future of marketing. Let me create a marketing haven scenario for you now. Take public relation key performance indicators, introduce AI measurement and tracking to target and report specifically these 4 areas. 1. AR, which is attendance rate. 2. RA, returning attendees. 3. SMM, social media mentions. And 4. LPRR, live polling response rates. And in the right environment, or an innovative trend-directed environment which a power brand like Nike can determine, we have a continued marketing cycle boom that continues to maintain so many key elements to keep customers happy that it would probably take a podcast to finish the list in itself. This improves revenue, reputation, brand creativity, technological development, what I would describe as an ultimate marketing haven. Of course, much easier with such a well-known brand and a little more challenging with a startup or SME. Wow, Nike Advertisements carries all this information. And this goes to show exactly why they are making such a difference as a brand in relation to diversity and inclusion. The Swatch Group rebranding white straps in early January. L'Oreal introducing a new product. Of course, it can become quite complex, but for purposes of my podcast, I want to simplify diversity and inclusivity so we can understand its purpose in relation to marketing going forward into the future of marketing. If you get the time, I certainly recommend you go and check out both of the advertisements. They are not too long and without question worth watching. Our first example titled, You Can't Stop Us. Our second advertisement titled, What If You Can. The links to both of these are in the description section of this podcast. Diversity and inclusivity can be quite a sensitive subject. I mean, if you enjoy something and feel as if you are being left out, it can lead to people who are extremely good in their field, be it sports, business, technology, retail, automotive, or even food, no longer wanting to be involved, at least in a social environment. This can actually seriously hinder any industry, actually causing them to miss out on hugely innovative ideas and technologies that we now might not get to experience in our lifetime because of lack of inclusivity. If you are involved, hooray! You're involved, you're having fun. Your ideas are being shared and considered. If you're not, you either want to be involved or must find another way to get your ideas heard, and by the right people. Or, what nobody wants, find something else to do. Even now, there are talented people on social media and other technologies who do not use social media to discuss things they are interested in. Some of the blame, of course, lies with the individual, but not always. For different people, this can have a severe impact on their daily lives. This is why marketers are showing increasing focused attention to the enforced 9 protected characteristics. These are included with the Equality Act 2010 in accordance with legal UK government policy in Great Britain. A quick recap on these 9 protected characteristics. First, age. Then disability, race, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, religion or belief, sex and sexual orientation. For the future of marketing, these 9 protected characteristics must be considered every day by every brand and every person, and so they should be. I hope this doesn't necessarily mean we have to walk on eggshells all day at work or wherever we go, but consideration and adjustment, if necessary, is a continued step in the right direction. There is also a diversity and inclusion strategy which sets ambitions to achieve in a 7-year plan which is close to ending in 2025. How will and has a strategy like this affected the future of marketing? What impact has it had on diversity and inclusion? The fundamentals are simple. If people are happy, able to do the things they enjoy, be part of a community, not feel left out, not feel as if they cannot try something because of a characteristic about them, then the overall strategy has been a success. This is where the brands that continue to adopt practices and procedures of diversity and inclusion now and in the future will reap rewards with the successes of their campaigns. The UK Home Office, for example, make 2 word-defining statements within their strategy, both for diversity and inclusion. The first, diversity. Diversity is about recognizing the value of difference. The second, inclusion. Inclusion is about ensuring we get the best from everyone. I think the way these 2 words have been described here should be incorporated into every marketing agency or department's office, not only for themselves, but in the work they produce. How an advertisement is seen has changed dramatically. The personalization is as important, with consumer spending power at times being put to full effect. Mr. Roland T. Russ, the same researcher mentioned in our first podcast, suggests the heterogeneity of customers and implication that a service provided should be personalized. If done well, this creates customer-brand relationships and can be utilized to incorporate high levels of inclusivity. This approach puts heightened focus on personalization systems, which means whoever you are, you will feel included in your area of interest. Heterogeneity of customers simply referring to the diversity of customers feeling as if they are being marketed to as an individual. When Mr. Roland T. Russ mentioned a service provider, this can easily be transferred into the product providing industry as well. An extremely lengthy segment and a huge amounts of information and examples within the segment. Let's move on to our penultimate segment for this podcast episode. Initially, I didn't think I would delve quite as far into diversity and inclusion as I have done. What it has shown me, and hopefully you as a listener of Rome's podcast, is that diversity and inclusivity are major value creation opportunities. The message is really quite simple, if you consider it to be. It only really seems to bring positivity with a theme that should remain present as marketing continues to progress. Anyway, now let's delve into the implications of these trends for marketing managers. Embracing D&I in marketing is not a one-time effort. It's an ongoing commitment that requires strategic planning and execution. Here are some key takeaways for managers. 1. Foster an inclusive culture. Encouraging diversity within your marketing team creates an environment where everyone feels valued and empowered to share their unique perspectives. This will lead to more innovative and inclusive marketing strategies. 2. Invest in training. Providing training on unconscious bias and cultural competence ensures that your team is aware of and sensitive to different cultures and experiences, which improves the authenticity of your campaign. If you remember my 2 scenario examples with the higher education university students, both achieved the same grades, yet the content of their study differed, clearly impacting the experience within the working environment. 3. Engage with diverse audiences. This actively seeks feedback from diverse consumer groups and conducting market research to understand their needs and preferences. This will help you tailor your marketing efforts to resonate with a broader audience. 4. Measure impact. Tracking and performance of your D&I initiatives, use of metrics such as audience engagement, brand perception, and sales growth to assess the effectiveness of your campaigns. Continuously refine your strategies based on these insights. Further considering type of key performance indicator, tracking is also recommended. 5. Collaborate with diverse influencers. Partner with influencers from various backgrounds who can authentically represent your brand. And their unique insights and connections can help you reach new audiences and build credibility. A short segment here, but certainly useful. Most definitely a hot topic for marketing managers in the near future, if not already. Now, quickly onto our last segment of my podcast today. The power of innovation and creativity in diversity and inclusion. Let's highlight how innovation and creativity play a crucial role in promoting successful brands through D&I. By thinking outside the box and challenging traditional norms, brands can create campaigns that stand out and make a lasting impact. Innovation. Leveraging emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning can provide valuable insights into consumer behavior. These technologies can help identify patterns and preferences across diverse groups, enabling more personalized and inclusive marketing strategies. Creativity. Embrace creative storytelling to highlight diverse voices and experiences. Authentic narratives that reflect real-life stories can forge deeper emotional connections with your audience. Remember, creativity coupled with diversity leads to campaigns that are not only impactful but also memorable, like our Nike advertisements. In my last podcast, I discussed at some length the importance of creativity in the future of marketing, innovations such as the Brainternet, an interesting discussion surrounding the untold creative failures of brands and the approach to quickly recover and learn from mistakes. That just about wraps up today's episode of Rome's podcast. We've explored into a somewhat intricate marketing perspective, the importance of diversity and inclusion in the future of marketing, referenced insights from several academic journals, market researchers and professors. We have crossed over into the luxury fashion industry, listing brands such as Prada, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Chanel and Armani, and the fact they are simply not shying away from diversity and inclusion. We have discussed the implications for marketing managers. Embracing diversity and inclusivity is not just the right thing to do, it's a strategic advantage that can propel brands to new heights. If done correctly and consistently, the results will follow. In marketing, a brand with trust and authenticity is easy to market. A brand with a tarnished reputation or lack of consideration into elements such as diversity and inclusion can become quite a challenge. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you found this episode informative and it inspired you to challenge your own diversity and inclusion beliefs. Maybe you want to introduce a new policy or suggest a new policy at work. If you were paying attention, I'm trying to gauge exactly how long my podcast should be, where you can remain engaged, still listen, learn and formulate your own opinions. Hence the very time for each podcast. As a listener, you can simply note down the time, then return later, but it is a unique learning experience for me either way. I would say in topics like this and my last 3 episodes, anything between 30 minutes to 1 hour is reasonable. Yet if I was to do a shortened version of podcast reviews of 1 or 2 advertisements like our Nike examples, they could probably be shortened into 10-15 minute podcasts each. This way you are getting marketing insight, considering advertisement elements you may not have done, and hopefully gaining inspiration for your own marketing adventures, be it personal brand, business or messages you want to create awareness for. Thanks again for listening to Rome's podcast, and until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of diversity and inclusivity in marketing. Stay well. Feel free to subscribe, share and leave me a review. Okay, so now episode 3 of target, now including target a new demographic. Okay, let's go like this. Click the tab, take the tab, then do it over here. Press this, okay, close it. Hearing the buzzer sound from and the infamous swish sounds and not going in. Very movie-like. Similar to how sometimes Nike are actually able to almost create a movie-like scene